Good morning and welcome to this week's episode of Global News Review. Today we'll be talking about different things from Egypt to Nigeria. There's a lot of global news, a lot of things happening outside. Just in case you don't know, my name is Ola, and on this channel we'll talk about personal finance, investing, and the economy. And so I encourage you to stick around. Now, the first news, let's start with Africa. But let's start with global news, right? Okay, so we all know that Nvidia has been the bride of the whole world in terms of investing in the US markets, investing in relation to artificial intelligence, and all that. And Nvidia has like crossed the 4 trillion mark in valuation. We've all seen that happen. Now, there was news that came out this week that Meta is in talk with Google to buy their chips. Now, one of the reasons why Nvidia has stood out for so long is because they have like more than 70% of the market share of chips that power artificial intelligence, that power gaming, all that. So the gist came out this week that Meta is in talks with Google to buy their chips. Right now, these chips have been designed internally by Google and they use it internally. So the gist is that Google is planning to start selling and Meta is about to somewhat what's the word, sign an agreement with them that as soon as 2026 they might start paying for it like on a short-term basis, and by 2027 they would officially start buying from them. Now, what happened on the back of this news was that the stock market moved. The first thing I want to highlight before I move on to other things is just the fact that when you see the market move, it's not just because people are just doing random things. There's story behind it. And for you to actually understand what is happening, you actually have to keep an eye on the news. That's why these sessions are actually very important. So on the back of that news, of course, the stock market moved, and then Google prices went up, and then Nvidia took a little bashing, right? Why? Because the capacity for Google's capacity is quite a lot, and by the time they actually start selling, it's going to improve their revenue significantly. Now, for you as an investor, the first thing I've said also is that you have to understand that markets move for different reasons. They don't just get up and they move. Number two, you also have to understand that even the guys that you say are like the top guys in a particular field, somebody's coming for them. Somebody's coming to take a portion of the game because the game is massive, right? And so you should always prepare for that. And then finally, for Google, and as an investor in Google, right? I mean, we know that there are apps, regardless of where you are in the world. If you're in UK, Canada, Nigeria, of course, in the US, you have access to buying US stocks, such that there's almost no reason why you shouldn't be in bed with these guys. Yeah, such that in these kind of things, all you are looking at is who's going to win, what's going to happen, and how do I position myself for something that is coming up in 2026, for Google versus Meta, and also what impact will it have on Nvidia. On the impact on Nvidia, I think that Nvidia's market share is so massive that it will take a lot for Google to sign those contracts or make people, what's the word, terminate their contracts with Nvidia and move over to Google. It will take a while. So you would see the handwriting on the wall before the markets get there. Also bearing in mind that Nvidia isn't just the bride for AI, they're also the bride for gaming, they're also the bride for computing, so they're almost like they built a moat around themselves for now. For now. So you as an investor, these are three companies that you should be looking out for, and I encourage you to do so. Hi, I see business online. Always here every Saturday. Love to see you. Good morning. And the next news is coming out of Egypt. Now, Egypt plans a world-class media city near the pyramids to attract global film production. I love this. The first thing to highlight is that it's a plan, meaning that it is coming. Now, as an investor, let me tell you how I think about this. If it is coming, even if I am not part of the media city financing, and I don't have what's it called, and I don't have the kind of funding, the way they'll bring some big boys to the table to do the funding, and I don't have that kind of funding. My thought is, what can I do in the area? The first thing that comes to mind is real estate. What are the things around that area that you can invest in? What is the land and what's the value there? Now, if you remember, well, if you've been consistently listening, you would have heard um, when they actually took off a cap on rents in Egypt. There used to be a cap on rental prices, how much a landlord could rent his house out to an individual, and that sort of slowed down the movement of buying and selling in the real estate market. They did that earlier in the year. Now, fast forward to now, the question is there a way that we can get into the Egyptian real estate market? So I was in a meeting with some guys from different countries talking about the AFCFTA thingy and how Egypt is actually open for business. There's actually a website. I'll look for the website and see if I can put it in the descriptions. If you don't see it in like a day or two, just pop a message up there to remind me. But there's a website you can go to that if you want to get licensing approval, you want to invest in Egypt, blah, blah, blah. There's a website you can go to. And once you put in the information you want, you get an account officer. Yes, as an individual or as a business owner, you don't even have to be the big boys of this life, but those things exist, right? So, as an individual, and thinking about the fact that the world is your oyster, like you can literally be anywhere in the world, you can be living in one country and be having investments in the other, right? The fact is, why not if not? Why not if not? So let's think about that. So fantastic. That's on one side for the investor. The other side also is just the fact that even in that city, you can buy land. So the question is how? How do we get there? That's one. Another thing also for global film production, this is being intentional and they are putting it by the pyramids. What does that mean? Anyone that wants to do any kind of, all those American movies that are just so grand, blah, 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 and they want to do major stuff, they will have a home in Egypt, right? What does that do for the economy? Number one, people are going to be flying in. Number two, so their airline industry, their currency, their hotels, do you get their food business? So there's a case for having an international restaurant market. They're having it like meaning people are coming from different countries and they don't just want to eat local food. This is how investments are found. And it's thinking like this and establishing the relationships between those two. That's how investments are found. So if you are team, I don't know where to invest. I put it to you that between the information you see in the news and the relationships you have around you, you can find good deals. While we're at it, I just want to let you know that from next week, Monday, I'm going to be doing an everyday series on YouTube talking about the markets, where should be investing in 2026, what happened in 2025, how to manage your finances across the holiday season. It's going to be a 12-day series and it's all talking about money. We'll start with how to plan for 2026. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button. It's going to be daily and it will cover your personal finances, investing, and the economy, how to position for 2026. So look out for it from Monday. And just in case, so you don't forget, please just subscribe right now. And if you're on the other platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, I'm not sure if we'll post on those platforms. Maybe we'll post the flyers, right? But YouTube is the place to be. Yeah. And then I think we go finally to Nigeria. Oh yes, of course, connect us on all social media handles. I believe I am back. So CBN issues Nigerian news finally. CBN issues directives defining HoldCo minimum capital. Right now, what is this story about? Right. So there's the whole capital raise, recapitalization of banks and all. And before now, and the reason for the recapitalization was because CBN said, see, I'm not going to look at all the retained earnings that you've had in the past. I want to see your actual capital, and I want that actual capital to be a certain amount. right? And then so they had to come out with this directive to say this is what we are defining as minimum capital. And minimum capital must be computed strictly as, oh yeah, let's go technical. Par value of issued shares plus any share premium arising from their issuance. So let me explain in simple English. If you remember, if you can remotely remember any of these ads for share IPOs or public offers where they'll say a 50 kobo share per share. No, 50 kobo, how do you put it? But not they'll say 50 kobo for the actual value of the share, but then they are selling at 7 naira, right? So the par value of the share is 50 kobo, but the share premium is 6 naira 50 kobo on top. So they are selling it for 7 naira. So basically, what the central bank is saying in like simple English is that, see, let's be clear. Whatever you are calculating in your minimum, in your capital requirements, it should be the actual shares that investors transfer to you. That's literally what they are saying. It should be the actual shares that investors transfer to you. But so far, in terms of an update, what we have seen and what the central bank governor announced recently was that 16 banks have met the minimum capital requirements. Right? What does that mean? Out of, and I mean, maybe we should publish a list of these things. But the banks that sleep easy, they are fine, right? There are 16 of them right now. However, I have had this question, I've had people ask me these questions in recent times because I mean, I have private sessions, I have corporate sessions, and financial wellness sessions with corporates and all. And people always refer to 2008 and the whole banks collapsing and stuff and saying, okay, this one they're asking us to invest. What's the guarantee that um, they can't collapse again? Now, one of the things that I want people to be assured of, even if your bank does not meet the minimum capital requirement, it doesn't mean that the bank is going to go down. It just means that they'll be forced to merge, they'll be forced to be taken over by a bigger bank, but your bank and your bank balance is not going to be impacted by not meeting up with capital requirements. Why? Because there are different things that the central bank and the global central bank sector, or what's it called, community, have put in place to make it harder for banks to actually crash and crash to the point where depositors, not investors, where depositors lose their money. So one of the things I'll tell you that this is just the banks going through a lot at this time. So if you have banker friends calling you to say buy stocks, buy my shares, blah blah blah, understand that they are going through a lot. However, for you as the one who has money in the bank, this is not entirely your problem, right? Because the central bank is watching, the central bank is making sure, in fact, this process is supposed to come up with stronger banks. So if you have two banks that didn't meet up, by the time they merge, right, and add their capital together, they'll meet up. So you find that merger and they'll become one. So that's what we might end up seeing. But we are waiting to see how things unfold as we go into 2026 when we hit the deadlines. But long and short of the story, this is just saying that, see, no mago mago here. The money that investors gave you is what I want to see as your capital to meet this requirement. And then the last news out of Nigeria is small companies must file returns despite 0% tax. Now, this is just education. It's not necessarily news. It's what's the word? We're supposed to do this already, right? But people just don't. But it is getting more and more important as a business owner to take your business seriously. I do think that this new tax laws that have come out and the process of enforcement of it would help a lot of small businesses, because what you find is that a lot of small businesses do not have proper books in place. Now, because you know you have to fight and engage to make sure you don't pay more tax than you should, your books will be forced to be in place. Now, what does that do for you the day someone suddenly wants to invest in your company? You have the documents that they need ready. So these things that we think is just from a tax perspective, guess what, guys? If you are running a small business, you have to sit up. You will be forced to know your numbers better. You'll be forced to be less careless. You'll be forced to also not move so much money to your account, to your personal account. Why? Because anything that comes to your personal account will be taxed flat, straight. You can't deduct any expense from it. So you begin to think responsibly as a business owner. And I think it will help businesses become sustainable and do things in the longer term than we have, because you have a lot of businesses that once the owner dies, everything just ends, things like that. But you see, we now begin to have sustainability, and this is one of the outcomes of this whole tax thing and the enforcement of it. But basically, what are they trying to say here? It's not like it's a law, it's just explaining what you should already know. Even if you have zero tax, you must file. You must file. You must always file as an individual. You are expected to have your tax returns. And the moment you want to do anything with the government, with structured organizations, they will be asking for your tax returns. So the question is, if you as a business owner, you want to grow, if you really want to grow, then guy, you must file, even if it is nil return. So that's basically it. There's nothing more than that. I also do think that a lot of accountants are going to be rich on the back of this, because even if you're like an accountant in any of the big four, you can just have like a small gig where you are helping small businesses around you to make sure that they are on top of their taxes, because it becomes more and more important as we go along. Even to anything you want to get as a business, I can tell you for free, implementation is going to get to a point where when you want to open a bank account, you need to show your tax filings. You need to show some kind of tax thing, or at least provide your tax ID and be sure that you are taxed okay, if you get what I mean. And so I trust that this session was useful. Also saying again that oh, nobody, I can see people, but nobody said hi to me, okay, apart from business online. Of course, if you have any questions, any thoughts, if you want to discuss the whole tax thing, drop it in the comments. I'm always happy to respond. And don't forget that I did mention that we're going to be having a series starting from December 1. And it's just going to be for 12 days. And I'm going to be talking about different aspects of your finances. So personal finance, looking into 2026, how to plan your finance into 2026, the investments that worked in 2025, what you should be looking out for in 2026, from a Nigerian perspective and a global perspective. So there'll be Nigerian edition, there'll be global edition, one day, right? We also talk about the economy, also talk about different things, have people on. It's just going to be an interesting one for the first 12 days of December. So look out for it, subscribe, hit the notification button, and see you on Monday. Have a beautiful rest of the week. And do not forget that you can't outsource your health and your finances. You always have to engage. Nobody can go to the gym on your behalf and you will be fit. Nobody can go to the can eat healthy on your behalf and you will be healthy and your skin will be glowing. No, you have to engage. That's the same thing with your finances. You always have to engage. See you on Monday. Bye.